We are going to bring back Dr. Michael Salla, and we also have our special guest JP tonight from the Secret Space programs. Of course, JP does stay in disguise for obvious reasons, OPSEC and whatnot. So, JP, welcome to the tipping point. Do you have any audio there? Are you hearing me, Dr. Salla? Okay.
I can hear you okay. I'm communicating with JP, and he says he can't hear anything at the moment.
Okay.
And JP, why don't you speak? I don't know if we can hear him.
Can you speak, JP?
Okay, there's no. He's can't hear us, and we can't hear him at the moment. It seems.
Okay, Jess, do you think we have a solution for that? JP looks like he may be texting. Mm-hmm. Can you, Michael, ask JP to go out and come back in and see if that shakes things loose for us? Yeah, 1 second. We'll work on this for a few seconds, folks. This is not unusual in technology. There are times when I jump on a show and we can't seem to get audio working on one side or the other. However, we usually do get those rectified. We'll have JP jump out here. If we can get him to jump out, come back in, try it one more time.
Yeah, he can try one more time, and what I can do is phone him and get him on my phone, and that way you can have the visual of him, and then we'll have my phone, and you can hear him at least.
Perfect. I didn't think of that, but yes, we've done that before here as well.
I'll go get my phone just in case.
Okay, good.
Can you
hear me, JP? Awesome.
Yeah,
we got you. Good.
Okay, great.
Good to have you here, brother. Well, sometimes, I mean,
nice to see
obviously,
you.
I'm sure even in advanced. Good, buddy. Good to have you. I'm sure the advanced technology.
I just switched over to my phone. Computer was not working.
Okay. Can you hear me,
Scott?
What happened?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hold on. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
And we can hear you.
Even with the technology we have today, I'm sure the advanced technologies you've seen in your lifetime have similar glitches from time to time. That's just my guess.
I'm sure it does. There's always somebody behind it. You know how it is.
Yeah, I came to learn about you. A friend of mine is sitting right over here. She's a huge fan. Robin's the one that had seen you with Dr. Salla and said, you have got to listen to JP, his work, his exposure, and whatnot. And I've heard a lot of amazing things over the years. It really started with Stephen Greer, of course, when I saw the 3-hour and 50-minute dissertation he did, the how the shadow government works. And that opened up a massive door for me in 2015. And so for 9 years, we've been going down. Gaia was great early on, Corey and David and Emery and a number of people through those programs had shared a lot of these realities. And certainly now my audience is no stranger to Secret Space program subject, and having another whistleblower here is pretty exciting. What I'd like to do is flip this over to Dr. Salla so he can do a proper interview, knowing you as well as he does, of you and what led you to come out into the open. And then I would like to start discussing your military track, how it led to getting into these programs, what you thought about all this when it was evolving. I mean, like, was your mind blown? Were you in a state of shock at times? And then you now end up into some, whether off-planet situations that you never dreamed probably that you would be a part of, let alone knew existed. I'd like to know what that emotional ride was like, and what that culminated in as your career path, or the selection of people like you to go into these realms and operate in a place that we would only dream about, at least having a view of. So, Dr. Salla, I'll let you do a proper introduction of JP since you have known him very well.
Sure. Okay. Well, I've known JP since 2008. He had a contact experience in Brazil, and we communicated over the years. And in 2017, he started sending me photographs of craft he was uh, seeing over MacDill Air Force Base, and he was being helped by operatives from the Air Force to notice the craft, and he actually had been on some of those craft. And so we got photos that he took of flying triangle craft and of flying rectangle craft that were part of an Air Force secret space program operating out of MacDill. And so the operatives wanted him to work with them because they knew he was a contactee. They knew he was in touch with these human looking extraterrestrials. So they encouraged him to join the military, which he eventually did. But JP, why don't you just say a little bit about the time you lived in Tampa, where you took the photos of the triangles, the flying rectangles,
Roger.
and the Air Force operatives?
Roger. My first experience, I was a civilian. I wasn't in the military. I had contact with these people, these ETs, people want to call them now, biologicals or whatever you want to call them. Some of them, they do walk among us. When I came back from Brazil, I got picked up by, operatives, and they took me to MacDill to interrogate me and ask me questions about what happened in Brazil. And from there on, I kept getting in touch with so-called black hats and white hats. In the same times, people are telling me, "Hey, you better not talk nothing. Don't talk about these situations that you're going through. Don't talk about things you have seen." And me being a civilian, I was really kind of scared, because I kind of heard that they can get rid of you, So I did not talk as much, but I had somebody that was telling me that I can talk and I can share the pictures. So I did. I connected with Dr. Michael Salla for the first time, and I started sharing my experiences, and then I started sharing the pictures that they were telling me to take uh, to show the public what we're dealing with, or show also the public, what we probably have. And I was like, "Are you sure you want me to share this? I don't want to be in the wrong boat." And they said, "You're protected. Don't worry about it." And I'm like, "Okay, if I'm protected, I'm all for it." So I kept sharing these pictures because the people that were telling me prior, they were saying, "Hey, this time, this thing is going to be flying, and just take the pictures and just share this information." And I'm like, "Roger, okay, awesome." And it kept going and going and going, them picking me up and the experiences. And I'm like, "Man, why is this happening to me?" And I'm talking to uh, my wife, and I'm asking her, and she's like, "This is probably spiritual." I was like, "No, man, this is not spiritual. This is happening. This is real." Until she saw a video of of I took a piece of a clothes of a so-called ET in Nordic, and it disintegrated in my hand, and I have that video. Um, my wife
A
saw
piece
that,
of the clo-
and she's like,
piece of
"Okay,
clothing.
a piece of clothing. I think it's made of micro technology that they have. So once you rip it off, it just disintegrates like a piece of water, or something liquidy, and it just disappears." I'm like, "What the heck is this?" And I took that with the old fashioned phone, so there's no way of manipulating it. So that was kind of cool. And then I moved to Orlando because we thought it would be better. I would be away from the base, and you know, nobody would bother me. I was still a civilian. I have a family. I was being followed a lot by people, and they were like interrogating me. What are you seeing? Why are you letting go of these pictures? Who's telling you to do this? And then one person came up to me saying, "Hey, you have to join the military." And I'm like, "What do you mean, join the military?" So I went into, a recruiting station. I first went to the Marines, and they put me running like 5 miles, and I went out, and then I went back 2 weeks later to the army, and then from there on, I joined the army, and the rest is more history. They were telling me what to say and not to say in the right time.
So they needed to
And
have you as an act.
the experience is like entering a Lamborghini for the first time. It's amazing, the experience, Scott.
So JP, are you saying that they needed you to be an active military member so they could guide and direct your disclosure of technologies and other things? Is that what you're saying?
I think that was the route that they're doing, that they were doing, yeah. And
So
they
I
still
have yet.
stationed me in Florida. So
What's curious to me is, we know about the Navy's program, Solar Warden Off Planet, the Dark Fleet Air Force's program. We got the MICICC, all
mhm,
these other agencies of sorts that have their own off-planet programs, which we're funding.
mhm,
We, the people on the planet.
mhm.
Um, I never heard of Army being actively involved in any secret space programs. Do they have a program, and what exactly does it entail?
Well, everything branched out from the army. If we look into the history, everything started with
Hmm.
the army. So I'm
Hmm.
sure we have also a type of program that connects to all the other programs. When you go to the base, it's always united. You always have Marines, you always have Air Force, you always have Navy connected to everybody. And
Hmm.
especially on the soft units.
So is there a point in time where you're able to be inside these craft, or were they showing you these craft from an external position and just recording them?
I was seeing it from the external position and also interior position, interacting,
Hmm.
because these guys, when you interact with these people that are in charge of these technology, they're really brutal, man. The way they treat you is like crap. So you can't cross a red
Oh,
line, or they will engage. It's no joke. So it's not fun and games. You have to. That's why I was really careful what to say and what I get to say, having the green light. If they tell me you have the red light, you can't talk about that, but you can talk about this. I'm like, okay.
mhm.
So I make sure, I protect this country the best I can, and this is the best country in the world.
So when you had experiences with non-terrestrials here on this planet, and you mentioned that they walk among us, can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, they can walk among us, depending on different projects and depending on different, agencies. They do integrate these human-like extraterrestrials, and
Hmm.
they put them in the public domain for them. I don't know, to do studies or for them to get more information, and they change their facial features. It's insane, the things that we have and the technology that we have.
So JP actually was part of a mission where he accompanied four of these extraterrestrials that were taken to this facility at a military base. Where why don't you describe, JP, how these extraterrestrials looked before they went into that facility and when they came out, and what your job was?
They're it's kind of, they look like the Vulcans, like, but it's weird because their face is like more square out. And when we took them to this location inside the base, that actually I took Dr. Salla into the base, and I showed him around to this particular base. Maybe later on he'll tell you what base it is, but for the protection of the guys that work there, I can't say the name of the base. But yeah, I Doc can share the name of the base with you later on. We took them to a location, and they came out, and then they came back different with like passports, different IDs, going to different places. I think they take also with military, C-130 or C-17, depending where they're heading. So it's amazing. And the building looks like a regular building, but when you enter, I guess they have the technology, or they have the knowledge how to change these people to look like us. So
And
it's
you
really
also said,
amazing.
and you also described how their physical characteristics changed from where they were very kind of pale, light looking to like now being tanned, and also speaking colloquial English as opposed to something that sounded
Yeah, yeah,
very.
they start looking like us. They they grab the accent really fast. American accent, or Spanish accent, and I guess they go out and they walk among us. It's insane, but yeah, that happens.
So these people, these beings, how do they communicate? I mean, let's face it, if they drop off on the planet from elsewhere, it's highly unlikely they speak English or, Spanish or whatever. Uh, what type of language or communication apparatus is part of their physical structure? They have voices. We know many are just telepathic. How does it? What is it, and how does it transform?
Yeah, it's more like they know what you're thinking. I don't know if they have a type of technology or a computing technology that can feel the frequency of our neurons in our brains, and they can connect with our mind in a way that they know what we're thinking. So in a way telepathic, and also I'm sure they have been with us for a long time, so they know our style of communicating in communications. I think they're really knowledgeable in how to communicate. They got a lot of emotional intelligence.
So when they're communicating with you telepathically, or at least they can read your mind, do they ask you a question telepathically and you can answer it, or do they have to verbalize something for you?
Sometimes they verbalize it, but it's just really hard to explain sometimes how they communicate. But we understand each other, and they do talk to us. They're
Mhm.
really direct in the way that they talk. Like if they want something, they tell you directly, hey, is this that we want? It's not like when they talk to us, they don't go around corners. It's like it's really direct. So that's why I
Mhm.
compare them with like the Vulcans. They're like really direct, like and they don't have no feelings. It's like yeah,
Is
it's
is
a
that
it's
a
a shocker
potential?
when
If they don't have any feelings or emotions, that would almost lean toward having some type of reptilian DNA where they don't care. They're just going to eat things, that move in front of them, with no remorse and no thought. So, are you saying, are they all like that, or just instances where they just didn't seem to have this emotional um, experience between humans or between each other?
I'm sure in the field that they're in, when they're dealing with military people or governments from around the world, I think they have to behave a certain way. So I'm sure they have types of feelings, but I think they have to behave a certain way with us, so
Mhm.
I think that's how it is. Scott.
Dr. Salla, what was it about JP and his experiences when you were talking to him when he was starting to come out that grabbed you? I mean, you've seen or talked to a lot of people in many years, and so obviously JP's now part of that circle of people that you look toward to get information. What was it? Was there anything striking about JP that when you were learning his story that grabbed you, or?
Yeah, well, what made JP different from the was that he had photographs of the craft that he was being taken on, and that was very very unusual. And he also said that he was being encouraged by covert Air Force operatives to take the photos. So that meant that he was part of a sanctioned disclosure process. That there were people
Mhm.
within the Air Force, especially out of MacDill Air Force
Deal?
Base.
Mhm.
Yeah, Tampa, because that's the home of Special Operations Command, and that they were running a secret space program there out of that base that operated all over the planet, and that yeah, he was being taken on the craft. He was being he was being encouraged to take photos of the craft and to share those photos with me, and so that I would then release them publicly. So it meant that this was a sanctioned disclosure initiative, and that the Air Force wanted this information to come out in 2017. So that really got my attention, because it meant that he wasn't doing this as a kind of um, someone that was kind of on his own, taking photos and sharing that, but that he was someone that had been chosen by the covert operatives to play a particular role. And later on, in writing the book series, it became clear that the Air Force had reached an agreement with the same Nordic extraterrestrials that JP was contacted by in 2008. So this was the same group, that they had reached a kind of technology sharing agreement, that they would share their technology with the Air Force, and in return, the Air Force would protect JP and allow him to disclose the existence of the secret space program. So there was an agreement that was reached, and JP was a part of that.
JP, what was it about you that made these people come to you? Like, there's something about you characteristically that made them say, this is a guy that we can trust, or somebody who has some credibility to disclose this? Because I don't know anything about your background at all. So it's a question that I would probably learn in a conversation with you privately.
My grandpa had experiences. My dad had experiences in Puerto Rico. So I think it's
Okay.
something that carries on in a generational way. So I think they know about that, about the experience that my dad had. And so my father never talked about it. I think I linked my dad for the first time with Dr. Salla. I think it was last year, and my dad for the first time told Dr. Salla his experience and how it happened in Puerto Rico. And I think it's a generational thing. Everything is registered in your DNA. So
That makes perfect sense. Obviously, that's really where um, the if it's not something that comes through and is ascending through a military operation, and be having these exposures to things little by little to build people up to it, for whatever reason they have the technical wherewithal to follow and track this, and emotional stability to not lose their shit, so to speak. And then, of
yeah,
course, they're the contactees. So you're not going to be as freaked out if you've been a contactee. But that's interesting that you're like a third generation contactee.
yeah. It's I think it happens to a lot of people, Scott. This is happening
Hmm.
everywhere, in every nation. It's just there's a hold on certain people when they come out. Look what happened to Grush. It's really sad, but it can happen to a lot of people. When
Hmm.
they come out, it's tough. You are followed. Your life is in danger and all that. But by them telling me that I got protection and that I am protected, I feel like I have the obligation to do it because I think the people
Hmm.
need to know the truth. And especially nowadays with everything that's happening and everybody talking about it right now. So it's really, we're living exciting times, Scott. It's amazing. And this closure, it will happen. I know there's going to be an impact on religion. It's going to be an impact on a lot of different type of people, but it's going to happen. And it could happen little by little, but now we see that it's a push. There's a push to it
Um,
in
so,
Congress and all that.
mhm, yeah, Dr. Salla, any interesting points you want to share here in your interaction with JP? You'd be a better interviewer here than me because you had the experience with him.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think JP, he when he joined the military, he was initially sent out on some space missions. This was something that was indicating that there had been a new group of extraterrestrials that had arrived into our solar system, and that was in 2021, and that was seemed to be a kind of a fundamental change in the kind of management of our solar system, where it was almost like one set of managers, which we would say maybe the more regressive extraterrestrials, the greys, the reptilians, the insectoids, that they were required to leave, and another group of extraterrestrials had arrived who were kind of more highly evolved, who were here to kind of oversee a kind of transition in how Earth was managed and how our solar system is managed. And so JP was on one of those first missions. It was a meet and greet because these evolved extraterrestrials arrived in the orbit of Jupiter. And so JP, do you want to just kind of explain this mission that you did to Jupiter and to Ganymede in 2021?
It was a beautiful experience. I would never forget that. You can feel the vibration of the planet. I know this could probably sound really out there, but we do. If
JP,
you
JP,
read,
we have talked about some of the craziest shit here on the secret space program. So you don't have to worry about this audience not being able to grasp or gravitate to what you're talking about. So if you want to talk about your emotional experience of this interaction of non-terrestrials and what they look like, what they smell like, what the energy vibration you're feeling, what were the conditions, what was the location, was it on a planet, off planet, was it in a craft or whatever? How were you introduced to them? Could you feel them telepathically grabbing your brain to download information? What exactly was that experience like? Where was it?
you are in these massive ships, right? And they go as a convoy to these different parts of the planets. You pass Mars, you go to Jupiter, Saturn, and it's like a convoy. And you interact with these other beings. Um, they're in the Moon Ganymede. They have a ship that goes up, right? And and it's like a security ship. And when the convoy gets close to Jupiter, we have to automatically pass through this security checkpoint, and they interact um, using frequency and vibration with the ships, and they interact also using quantum communication on these ships. These ships are advanced. What we have out there, it's an amazing. And you don't walk in these ships. You float around these ships. It's not like a Star Trek. You do float around these ships, and there's types of handles everywhere. And in my recent
Hmm.
mission to um, the remembering of Saturn, we were on this mining ship. This mining ship was massive, and the way you travel through this mining ship, it has like a tube, like a glass thick tube that you get into, and it has like it blows you through the ship, and each department of the ship has like a handle that you get into, and you just connect with people that are there as well. It's it's something that it's hard, I think, for people to grasp. I think, but like you said, your audience already heard about this, and I'm sure that soon this information will come out about these armadas of ships that we have. Where's the money
Mhm.
going? So
Yeah.
it's and then the show that's happening on here on our planet too. It's when you see these experiences and you go through these experiences, right? And you interact with these ETs and you interact with other people that are going through this experience with you. It's a feeling that when you come back here and you see everybody, you're like, man, I can't believe nobody knows about this. I can't believe that nobody goes through what I go through. I'm sorry for my pronunciation sometimes. I speak Spanish and also Portuguese, so I have a mixture of languages in my head.
Mm.
That to express my experiences and all that. But
What's your name?
yeah,
What's your native language? Is Spanish your native language?
Spanish, Spanish, and
Okay.
then jumps to English. But then I married a Brazilian, so I I had to learn
Portuguese.
Portuguese. So in our house, we speak like Spanish and Portuguese. So it's like,
I can understand that because I had a
so
friend of mine 30 years ago. She was from Puerto Rico, and when she was here for a number of years going to school, and I asked her to speak to me in Spanish or in yeah, Spanish. So she sort of hesitated and paused, and I couldn't understand what's the pause. And she said, I speak English all the time here. I have to think to speak Spanish again because the sentence
mhm.
structure is backwards or different. Like there goes the cat versus uh, the cat goes there, or however the mixed sentence structure was
El
something
gato
you
va para
had to
allá.
think
Yeah.
through. Yeah, yeah, because you said it in if you had a Spanish style of speaking in English, you'd be like, "What the hell did you just say?" Oh, same words, they're just
Everything is
positioned
backwards.
differently. So
Everything
everything's
turns
backwards.
like backward.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
back 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 to Jupiter. Uh, when you go to when you enter to the vicinity of Jupiter, right, and you see this planet, and you feel like a humming sound from Jupiter that the ship also interacts with it. Everything has a frequency and vibration. But when you go to the dark side of Jupiter, you see lights like hundreds of different of lights on these storms that are in Jupiter, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like when you go through the other side of Jupiter and the other moons of Jupiter, there's also interact. You can see ships like all over the solar system, like from far, because they emit this light, and when you see that, it changes you, Scott. It really changes you when you see that. I'm sure these
Is it
people.
is it like a busy day in New York City? You just see traffic, people, like activities of these beings in our craft.
Not
It's
not
that busy.
not as much like New York City.
Not that much.
Uh,
Yeah, not that much.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you
How
do
about
see
like
light
Osceola,
pollution like all over the
Pennsylvania?
place.
Yeah.
You do see like
Um,
light all over the place and all that.
right.
And
So
when
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Continue. I got a million questions to ask you. Just keep plowing through. We'll bring you back.
And
so
JP,
it's
maybe
like
JP, I was going to say, or maybe you should spend a little bit of time talking about the space arcs as well. You've been on these ancient, huge motherships or space arcs that are on the
oh that's
moon
that's
and
amazing.
Atlantic, under the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, let's definitely hear about that. I also want to hear about. Let's talk about the space arcs that you've been on, and let's also get to before the end of the show. We got 20 minutes. I want to hear if you've seen any of these technologies that we're always talking about here. Zero point energy, anti-gravitics, sonic healing technologies. People always ask about med beds. Have you? Let's get to that next, but I want to ask you specific questions. Have you seen proof, visual proof, that these technologies exist off planet? I've never seen them, heard about it forever, and I believe it. But let's talk about these space arcs on the moon. And Dr. Sally, you're talking about these massive craft. Are they ancient? And they're there, like they have to archaeologically dig them up.
Yeah, they're just very ancient, very large, and they were used historically for rescuing people or taking them away from destructive earth changes on the planet. So it goes back millennia. I mean, you got Noah's Ark, and you got
Mhm.
similar ark stories in other cultures. And Dolores Cannon also talked about these ancient space arcs rescuing people, but she described them as kind of like spacecraft rather than wooden boats. So JP's been on a couple of these on the moon and under the Atlantic Ocean. You want to describe that?
Mm.
When I first went to the space arc. I think I called you, like I think it was like maybe 6 years ago, Doc, when I was in Tampa. They took me first, and I went to this donut shaped ship in the middle of the Atlantic. And the way it looks, it has an elevator that is connected in the middle. And the metal that this elevator is made of, it's like flexible, but it's so strong. You still feel the pressure when you go down into the ocean in these types of elevators. So I think these elevators are connected um, magnetically in each corner of this tube-like metal thing that goes all the way down and interact with these arcs. So once you enter these arcs, it's like it looks like a something ancient, but also something futuristic. So when we do go down there, they go down there with different types of scientists, linguistic people, um, people that have experiences that has been somewhere else and other different missions. So it's the technology that are on these arcs. They look simple, but it's like a magic. It's something like if you give a cell phone to an Amazonian Indian, right? They'll see that as magic. So this is the same way we saw these arcs. It's a technology that is so advanced that when you walk, the walls they start like sparkling, and then the smell is like a vanilla, rose, and acidic type of smell, and it smells like it's like really ancient, like really old. Um, Algae like type of, and the oxygen is really pure in these arcs. I don't know if it has a
Hmm.
mechanism that um and I'm sure it has I think these arcs have been visited by different civilizations throughout the time
Mhm.
it has been in earth. So it has a historical um bank of seeds and other types of
Hmm.
seeds, if you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's an
Another
amazing
wipeout.
thing that we
Another
have
wipeout of
found,
the
but
planet
other
would
countries
require it. Mhm. A
in other
wipeout of the
countries they
planet.
know about these arcs.
Yeah, I guess a wipeout of the planet, another massive cataclysm, Noah's Ark scenario. We would have to have seeds to try to, I guess, repopulate with vegetation. I want to jump to the moon and come right back here. Is the moon an artificial structure inhabited on the inside, many layers? Do you have that
It,
answer?
it, it I do not have that knowledge, but I do have the knowledge that the moon is inhabited by different people and
Yeah.
people that look like they look Indian like features. So they have been visiting Earth for a long time, and they have like these egg type of ships that come out from the moon, and they visit
Hmm.
Earth a lot. And I think they're also communicating with the Nordic type of civilization. So I think really these people that come from different places. This is how I've been seeing these things and trying to analyze this. I think they're all from, it could be all from Earth, but you know how throughout time they have developed and left, and they still come and visit us and teach us and try to show us the way. The same way there's black people, Chinese people, Indian people, different features. And I believe that they look different, but they're just more advanced in a spiritual way and technological way.
Um, Very interesting perspective. Dr. Salla, that question for you. I mean, that's the information I've gotten over the years. The Earth or the moon's an artificial structure that was used to transport beings from, I don't know if it's other planets, maybe when the cataclysm or the war that created the conditions on Mars, and they had to get people off Mars or maybe other planets, and that was a craft to bring them here and deposit them on the planet, or I should say posit them on the planet, accurately spoken in the language it counts, instead of deposits to take them off, posit is to put them in there. Banking um, I guess lingo. But so I saw you nod your head. The moon is not a natural satellite of Earth. It is an artificial structure.
It
Yeah,
could be
that's
like a
right.
moon ball. Yeah.
Yeah, the movie
Sorry,
Moonfall
guys.
kind of like described it as an artificial structure, and I mean we know from historical texts that there used to be a pre-lunar civilization on Earth. I mean that
Hmm.
Emmanuel Velikovsky wrote a book sometime in the early 1950s where he described different ancient historians who actually talked about a time before the moon, and so that meant that
Hmm.
I think what happened was that that the arrival of the moon was somehow associated with the great cataclysm that we regard as the end of the Younger Dryas period around 9600 BC, which ended the Atlantean civilization and kind of like plunged the Earth into some kind of period of upheaval for several millennia until things were restored. But the moon was the arrival of the moon, I think, was the catalyst for that.
Interesting. Is exactly how I've heard that over the years. JP, Dragon Lady here on the chat asked, she said, egg type ships, Mork for Mork. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Mork and Mindy, a TV show. Mork shows up here from another planet on a TV show, and he's got an egg shaped craft that he arrives in. It's very popular. Robin Williams was that character. Anyways, so my answer to that, Dragon Lady, is where do you think they got these ideas to put it in TV shows or movies? These disclosures have been happening for a long time through the Hollywood machine via the Pentagon, very likely, other programs.
I think it's going to be a time that, they want to make us comfortable with these things that we are
Mhm.
seeing now flying.
Mhm.
Look what's happening in New Jersey, South America, uh, all over the world, with Russia, Ukraine. I'm sure there's an arc somewhere in Ukraine. So it's uh, it's a battle of technological battle because it is technology. And the good thing is about these arcs that in these different arcs, they all look the same. So like in perspective, like say there's a scientist in this arc in the Pacific, right? And then there's another scientist in this arc in the Atlantic, and they go to one room, they communicate to this person and ask them, hey, do you see this? Do you see that? Do you see this? And they confirm, yeah, it's the same thing. Oh, shit, awesome. Okay, all right, that's good. We can cross that out. So these arcs, they all look like the same, like if they were built somewhere else, like a factory or something like that. And I think now they're finding out that they have a mechanism that when these arcs come up, they can connect to each other and make a mega structure. And that's
Hmm.
what I find really interesting with that information, that these arcs can one day probably go up and connect to each other and take whatever or whoever to a different place.
It's tragic how far behind we are in our evolution on this planet, spiritually and technologically. I mean, we're talking hundreds of years behind. If we would have had the continued trajectory, which seems to move at a geometric pace, 300 years, you look at back 300 years ago and analyze where we'd be today as a species if we look at the speed with which the information age came on and
Mhm.
accelerated at a geometric rate. what it would be like here on the planet. My understanding, and this is, I think, I forget which of these whistleblowers had talked about when this entire, whatever you want to call it, this cabal architecture on the planet, off planet, on the planet, are completely defeated. Um, then obviously we're at a point. I saw a rabbit and it ran away from me again. But here's what it is. What I had heard, that these major players, these cabal players on the planet, the Kissingers, the ones that are still left alive, who have done this to humanity, they're going to answer for it. They're going to be taken off planet, put in front of the Galactic Federation. Why did you do this? Right? Why did you do this to humanity, and have to face some type of retribution? Dr. Salla, have you ever heard this from any of your contacts in the programs, that there's a reckoning coming for these people that did this to humanity?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The reckoning is happening now, that people who have been committing a lot of these crimes, that they are being exposed, and that brings about the reckoning. And that the Galactics, I mean, that's how they do things. That they will help humanity expose the injustices, expose the leaders that have been kind of like keeping us in the dark for decades. And that's the way that they operate, rather than coming in and punishing people themselves. That they kind of leave it to those who were the victims to kind of like realize what happened, and then to kind of come up with some kind of solution to what happened to them.
We are down to 5 minutes left. And Dr. Salla, I want you to use that little bit of time we have left to make a request of JP on some of the most interesting information you have learned from him. I think the last question would be best coming from you. And when we're almost at that point, the radio will take over the music. So I'll kind of guide us to that exit, just so you know. I got a little timing I got to deal with here.
Okay, well, I think a lot of people will be very interested in JP's meeting with the ant people, because the ant people are described in Hopi legends and other Native Americans who talk about these ant people who gave refuge to humans during times of great change and cataclysm, from the end of the third world into the fourth world. So, JP, do you want to say anything about the ant people civilizations that you met?
They come
Are
out
we talking
and they
arachnoid?
help.
Are we talking about the physical characteristics of arachnoids, or they're a human looking species?
They're
Yeah,
similar
JP.
to like a human looking species, but their characteristics are really um, it's their skin is more like a not scaly, but they're really skinny, and they're really like muscular in some parts of the area. And their antennas is not really like antenna, but it's like it looks like a hair. It's made like a hair, and it is like pointed down, and they they communicate also telepathically. That's amazing how they communicate also, and they have the knowledge of different types of plants, medicinal plants that they share with other people. They go as far as in Peru, South America, Brazil, and the United States, and the interior part. And I think for me, they're all connected. I think they have it's like a chain of like a kingdom type of um, living that they live in, and they come out in these massive forests, and then sometimes people do go down there and they just stay there and they live with them and they teach them their ways. So a lot of people do go missing in these national forests. So the sometimes if you the way that we went in there for like a mission, they have like I don't know if you've seen those spiders that they come out and they have like a it's like a ¿cómo se dice eso? It has like a hatch, So these hatches, they come out, but it's like pressurized. And when you go into these interior parts, they guide you, and they have like protection. They have like a security protection, and they do have crafts and all that come out and all that. And I think it fishes out through the ocean as well. So it's an they are amazing in their knowledge of medicine and plants and all that, and teaching um, our ancestors the ways of how to live on Earth.
I would expect the native tribes of this country. My guess is certainly interacted with them, and specifically, I believe in the Grand Canyon area, there's pretty advanced technologies from non-terrestrial civilizations that are there, and obviously we don't have access to them, but I suspect that time's coming. I think the most exciting thing about what this planet and the human species has in front of them is, first of all, more conversations with people like you who've experienced these things. We're all asking the same question. How can you just sit there so calmly and not be flipping out like this is, I can't even get my head around this if it were me.
Yeah,
And you're it's old school to you, and you have this, obviously, this calm presence about it. But most of us would be crapping our pants um, with disbelief that we are witnessing things like this. I think the greatest experience for humanity, aside from clearing the table of this global criminal architecture so we can unleash the potential of the human species and have this remarkable experience, I can't think of anything that's going to be more exhilarating than the disclosure of non-terrestrial life. We, outside of the military, getting to interact at some point with non-terrestrial species, it's going to be like being an adult and wanting to go to school from kindergarten up and getting up early to brush your teeth to get there first as fast as you can to go to school again to learn all the amazing things that we just have been robbed of. Anyways, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm gonna uh, I'm just going to tell the audience, folks, they're coming back. I'm going to commit both of them here. We got to bring both Michael and JP back and do this. I think this is one of the better topics for all of us. And I know that we just lost them on camera. It's the exit. Gentlemen, much love to both of you. Thanks for your courage. Scott McKay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now done. The music is taken over. Patriot Street Fighter out.